Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Teen Gen Talks, where the goal is to empower the youth of Glendale and connect youth to community resources, individuals, and organizations through interviews and discussions. I'm your host, Melissa.
And I'm Desiree. We had the pleasure of talking to Zeke Peña. Zeke is a Chicano illustrator and cartoonist from El Paso, Texas. He illustrated the award-winning books Mi Papi Has a Motorcycle and Photographic, The Life of Garciela. His studio work is a mashup of political cartoon, border sketch, and hip-hop culture that addresses identity, politics, ecology, and social justice. Zeke is currently writing and illustrating a story for young readers about growing up in the desert. We hope you enjoy the interview.
Thank you, Zeke, for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for making the space for me to be here. Yeah, I'm really excited to speak with you all, and thank you for giving me the platform to talk about my work. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. So thanks.
Awesome. So to start off the interview, what about drawing and painting drew you to it?
Yeah, drawing. I mean, I think like a lot of us, it's like a common question, but and I always try to like say this because I think that it helps encourage other people who say that they can't draw, right? Like so many people, like that's what they say. Oh, I can't draw. I love what you do. Like I can't draw, right? And it's not that it's just not true, right? Because we all draw. We draw when we're young, or most of us do. I should say the vast majority of us do. And just like everyone else, I started drawing when I was younger. And I think comics is what like really got me into it. It's really what got me interested. I could say cartoons also, like cartoons were really a big part of my life growing up. And that's what really interested me, I think, in characters. I've always been very interested in characters, and like so I was very intrigued from I think a young age trying to understand like how they made cartoons or how comics were made. It was like this mysterious thing when I was younger. And so a lot of my early drawings, like in some of when I give presentations and stuff, it's something that I'll review sometimes is like showing really early drawings that I did. I also like to show those drawings because they're terrible, right? Like as they should be, right? Like they're drawings. I still make terrible drawings. Like it's just a part of the process, right? Like none of us are perfect. And I never want to be perfect. Like I never want my drawing to always just be perfect, because then it's a really good indication of me not being open to growth and like not trying to try different things. And so I think, from a young age, when I show those, what I was talking about, those presentations, is like I'll show early drawings, and like from really early on I'm trying to like draw cartoon characters. It was funny, like, so my sisters and both my mom and my sister are educators, and my sister is still currently works in a middle school in Texas. And she sent me a picture of one of my books that was at a book fair, and it was like the first time I think I actually saw one of my books at a book fair, and that it was like huge to me. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Just this was just yesterday actually. And that was something really cool for me too. Like I was always into books, very intrigued by them, like by the medium. And so some of the early books that I would get from book fairs and things like that were like how to draw characters. I have some books here on my bookshelf that are the same. I had to reorder them, but they're the same books that I had when I was a kid, like how to draw like goblins and monsters and like different characters. And so I think it was that part of the process of like trying to figure something out, right? It's like a problem solving thing. Like here's this really cool like Felix the cat character, right? Like how do you draw that? And so, a lot of it's with basic shapes and stuff. And so I think that's what really got me interested in drawing from an early age.
So, do you remember some of your first drawings that you have done?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, like I think one of the earliest ones that I have is a drawing of Felix the cat from third or fourth grade. And it's funny, like it was like super important for me to let everyone, like I signed it at the bottom, right? Like as you do when you're younger. Um, and at the bottom of it, or right under my signature, it says like hand drawn by Zeke Peña, And it was like super important for me to let everyone know, like, hey, like I hand drew this. I don't know if you all knew that, but like my hand did this. So that's definitely a drawing. But maybe something different that I haven't talked about yet is I recently moved, right? Like I grew up in El Paso, Texas. I was born in New Mexico, in southern New Mexico, which is where my mother's family's from. And I recently moved, and like in moving, you're always like boxing your stuff up and like packing it and trying to get rid of stuff and then like taking on new stuff. And like, so you're always, or at least I am, I like collect things too. Like I'm like a archivist, right? So I have a lot of old drawings from when I was younger. And I recently came across some drawings from when I was in middle school. And they were drawings of like, it was like a mixed bag, right? It was like I was in middle school, so it was like this thing where I was like super into like hip hop and like lowriders and like just like that kind of lifestyle. So some of them were like drawings of cars um and then on the other side of it was like being into comics, right? So some of them were like wizards and like magic stuff and whatever. And then probably the standout though from that little sketchbook, because they were all in one little sketchbook, was a drawing of Selena, like Selena, the musician, who's from Texas, and it's like the worst portrait you could ever see of Selena, right? But it's like one of the eyes is like this, and it's like all really crooked and stuff. But I liked it. I thought it was cool that I was like dug Selena enough to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna draw this. I'm gonna draw this for her. So yeah, maybe that's the one that I'll leave you with. Yeah.
I love that. And so you have a degree in art history from the University of Texas at Austin. So from, just, drawing to then later pursuing this avenue, what made you want to pursue it?
Yeah, I have like a really I also like to share this part. Like I have a very winding road to get where I'm at now, right? It seems like there's like this one straight path that like from point A to point B, and like you're gonna start doing this and then you're gonna end up doing this.
Mm,
And that's like for sure not the road that I took. That was not my path. I took a really winding road to get here, right? And I did a lot of different things. I've worked many jobs. And I've worked in film, and I've owned like a record store, and like I've DJ'd, and then I like did writing and all this other stuff and did graphic design stuff. And I think that I I always wanted to do this. Like I was always interested in making books um from a young age, and specifically comics and cartoons, like. But I think that it wasn't necessarily that desire wasn't there. It was really more just like trying to think practically about it. Like, is this a practical thing for me to do? Like many of us, we grow up in households where like our parents want us to have a really practical job. They're like, we want you to make a living and be able to support yourself and like live a life, and whatever a family looks like to you, or whatever your life looks like to you, we want you to be able to have that, right? And so I think that my parents, while they were super supportive of like my creativity and my drawing, I think that they were wanting me to do something practical. So I initially studied architecture in Lubbock, and at Texas Tech in Lubbock, and I loved studying architecture, and I absolutely could not handle Lubbock, so I moved. I left after one semester. It just like wasn't my vibe. I just like didn't feel comfortable there, and so I left. And I went back to study at home for a little while. I've also studied at 4 different universities, or excuse me, 3 universities and 1 community college. So some of my degree comes from a community college. So I went to different schools and stuff. And the reason that I chose like art history was because I had applied to the graphic design program at UT Austin, and they accepted my application. They're like, yeah, cool. You're in the college, like you can come to the university. But the graphic design program at that point was like really competitive. And at that time, I really hadn't done a whole lot of graphic design. I didn't really have like a portfolio. I had mostly been focusing on painting and drawing. And so they didn't think that I was a good candidate to be a graphic design major. And so I was in the university and just had to pick like a degree, and I just picked art history because it seemed to me like it was close enough to what I was really wanting to do, but it also checked the box for my parents of like I could go be a professor, or I could go on to work at a museum or something like that. And I think that while I was going to school, that was definitely my intention, was to be an art historian, like a curator or a professor or something like that. And then after going through that process, I just started freelancing for a long time after I graduated. Film, graphic design. I did other just random jobs, and then little by little, I started getting more and more opportunities to illustrate. And then, finally the book project came across, and 2013, I think it was. And then that was really kind of what set me off on the path that I'm on now to be an illustrator.
How did you hone in your craft and find your own style?
Oh man, this is a rough one. Um, I think that I'm confident now saying that I've done that, right? Like I think I can say that now. I have confidence in that now. I didn't used to, for sure. Like it's like a organic thing. It's not, I didn't like arrive, I didn't like draw something one day and I was like, oh yeah, like this is my style, like this is what I do. Which I think is like how everyone is, right? Like it's with anything that we do, that's like it's always gonna fluctuate. It's not ever, you're not ever gonna get to a point where you plateau and it's like, yeah, like I'm doing everything I want to be doing with my craft. But I think it was just experimentation, honestly. Like I tried a lot of different things, as I've mentioned several times now at this point. Like it's really important to me. Like, so when I'm teaching illustration too, so like I have been a professor of illustration, it's really important to me to also suggest like doing different things that are not in the medium that you're working in, right? Like it's super important to listen to music, to go watch movies, to go take a walk in the park or go for a hike or something, right? Like, and all of that experience, I think, is what has informed my, life. And I think that that lived life is really what helps fuel my work. It's really what gives me ideas. It's what helps me generate like that creativity to go to the blank page and create something. That's one side of it. And then the other side of it is just practice, right? So I would say experimentation and then practice. Just like anything else, right? Like whether you're learning to cook or learning to sew or whatever it is, you're gonna make some bad stuff. It's like those bad drawings are gonna be there. You're gonna write some terrible things, and you just kind of keep doing it. And I think that in a strange way, I think even the way that I answered this question at the beginning, right? Like it's a lot about self-confidence. It's a lot about like self-acceptance and like self-love, right? Like, do I think the thing that I did is a good thing? And I have to be able to answer that question like, yeah, that's a good thing that I did. And so I think that that just comes with experience and experimentation and practice, right? And trying those different things. And then certainly I've taken influence from other illustrators, musicians, creators, friends, people in my community, colleagues. I mean, I continue to still look at like young illustrators and, people who are, making manga like in high school or whatever, just whatever anyone's doing. I'm like very interested in like new formats and new ways of creating work. And so I think that interest is also what helps me continue to go back to my style and the way that I draw and the things that I do to, see if I want to try something different.
And you illustrated the award-winning books, My Papi Has a Motorcycle and Photographic The Life of Garciela. How did these opportunities arise?
Yeah, so this is a pretty easy story. It's like the project that I mentioned earlier in 2013, when I first got an opportunity to make something in the publishing industry. I had always self-published, right? Like coming from a place like El Paso, Texas, there aren't a whole lot of like opportunities to, I think it's changing quite a bit now. The city's growing and stuff, but weren't a whole lot of opportunities to like show in galleries and like certainly not publishing work. But I had always, self-published things and, try to find little magazines to do illustrations in. I was big like in the music industry, like making album covers, making show posters, doing community organizing work and making, posters for community organizing and activist initiatives in the community. And that practice, I bring that up because I think that it was really that practice that helped prepare me for when that opportunity came across. Because once that opportunity was there, in 2013, I was prepared for it. Like I felt confident to be able to do it. And so a small publisher in El Paso, Texas, Cinco Puntos Press, was publishing the work of Isabel Quintero, who is my friend and now longtime collaborator. And Isabel was working on her first manuscript and a story that is really personal to her. It's a beautiful book. And they paired her with me to do the book cover and some interior illustrations for that book. It's a book by the name of Gabby, a Girl in Pieces. And once that opportunity kind of came across, I got just like a sense of what it was like to make work in the publishing industry. And I think then from that project, it just kind of grows, like people saw that book. And so then I got another job to make a book cover. I get another job to make another book cover. People see that work. And then then we get this opportunity to make the children's book. And that was in 2019. My Papi Has a Motorcycle. That's also written by Isabel. Actually, I skipped one. Photographic is the one that we worked on in 2017. And so those were just, I mean, I think they come from our collaboration. I think that it's like the pairing of Isabel and I is really what generates that opportunity. She's an awesome author, and I think I'm pretty awesome illustrator. And so they paired us, and it just kind of rolled from there. We worked on Gabby, then Photographic, and now My Papi Has a Motorcycle. And so but it was really just, again, like having made the work and having a lot of a large portfolio of illustrations, working on many projects, and then being prepared for that moment of opportunity, right? Because those moments of opportunity, they pop up, but sometimes we're not ready for them, right? So I think that the timing was just really good. It was a good moment, yeah. Part of it's luck a little bit too, unfortunately.
So you have also done covers for two records, Texas Soul and Chicano Batman. How did you approach a music project versus a book project?
Oh, I love this. This is maybe the best question I've ever had in an interview. And honestly, the first time, maybe second time someone's ever brought up my work in music. So thank you all for doing that. Yeah, I approached them differently. Let me think. I think I approached them differently in thinking about how people are going to engage with the work, right? Because it's a little bit different. An album cover nowadays, most people are not collecting records, right? Or vinyl records or CDs or tapes or whatever, unless you're like into like this vintage thing, right? Or throwback thing. But it's like we're mostly on our phones, right? So the way that we're looking at the work is going to be a lot smaller, unless you're on your computer or on YouTube or something on your computer. So I think about that a little bit. I think about how the person who's looking at it is going to be looking at it. I literally try to like put myself in the position of the person who's going to look at the image that I'm making. The Texas Soul one was a really fun one. Adrian Quesada, who's also in the Black Pumas, been a longtime friend. I've known Adrian since I went to school in Austin in the Grupo Fantasma days, which is a band that he used to play in. And I always wanted to collaborate. Just the timing was never right. And at some point he just reached out to me and I got to work on that one. And then the Chicano Batman single, This Land Is Your Land, that one was a really fun one. There were some like different ideas around the cover, but at the time I had been working on a lot of work around the river between Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. It's referred to as the Rio Grande, right? Or the Rio Bravo. And so I had made this image. I was doing research in the community of people who had experiences with the river. And I had this drawing of one of my elders, like one of my mentors, swimming in the river, diving into the river. And I showed it to them. I already had it drawn. I showed it to them and they liked it. And so they were two super different experiences because one was kind of already drawn. I just had to prepare it. And then the other one was made specifically for the Texas Soul project. But yeah, like I've been collecting records since I was in high school. I started DJing in high school and like emceeing in high school. And so music informs a lot of what I do, not just like audibly, like the way that music is created, but production techniques, the medium of the vinyl, right? Like it's a tactile medium, you're holding vinyl. And so it's a lot like a book in that way. And those parallels are, something that I'll play with sometimes.
So your work is a mashup of political cartoons, hip hop culture that addresses identity, politics, ecology, and social justice. The cartoons that you have created are so powerful. How did you know, like, okay, I have to draw and convey these messages? Was it the lack of representation a push?
Yeah, like that certainly plays into it, like the lack of representation thing. I'm aware of it, and I think it's a super important issue. I think that it's something that's like lower on the priority list for me though. I think that everyone should just have access to like put their work out there, right? Like we all should be able to have our stories in the hands of people who are wanting to read our stories, right? And I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than that. So I think when I'm making that kind of work, especially in the community, it's really more focused on like the intention of what's being made, right? Like the intention of a certain initiative. I've done a lot of organizing around, border rights issues in my community with regard to the river, with regard to citizenship, right? Land rights, right? Indigenous land rights, things like that. Food justice is a project that I've recently worked on. And so I think um, when I'm doing that work, it does look very different than when I'm making a book cover, for example, um, because I'm wearing a little bit of a different hat. It's a very similar hat, but it's a different hat. When I'm in that role, someone from the community is contacting me and they're saying, hey, here we are, this is our organization, or this is our initiative, and this is something that we're really concerned about, and this is something that we're wanting to raise awareness about, or raise funds, or like whatever the initiative is, right? Or someone's in detention, we're trying to get someone out of detention, right? There's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different orgs working on different things. But they're contacting me and they're saying, this is what we're working on. And all they're looking for is for me to put a visual to that thing, right? It's typically a story, right? Sometimes it's a concept or an idea. And so I think, you know, if someone reaches out to me, I'm going to follow their lead first and foremost. They're the experts on the topic and the issue. And I'm really just a person that can draw really well and figure things out. So how can I make myself useful, right? Like, how do I make myself a tool that the community can use, right? I don't have to be the person to speak on everything, but if someone requires it of me and asks me to do it, then that's really when I'm feel like I need to say something. So I think that it's really motivated by that. It's motivated by someone, one of my friends or someone in the community is saying like, hey, this is an important issue. We would like to partner with you and collaborate on this, and for you to draw some stuff. And so that's really where those projects come from.
So when you don't have any inspiration to draw or create, what do you do to overcome it?
I take lots of breaks. I sleep. I take naps. I sleep on the floor in my studio sometimes. I try to go for walks. Sometimes it's interesting. Like I think I've tried to be more aware about when to stop, right? It's so easy to have like a lot of inspiration to like just draw stuff and make stuff, right? It's you're kind of always thinking like, why haven't I made that thing already? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out because I need to draw, or I'm so stressed out because I want to create this new thing or try this different thing or finish this project, right? And so I think that a lot of the energy is really like you're trying to create. And so sometimes those blocks come from trying to push too hard, right? It's like you're just doing too much, right? So how can you try to do less? And so I think that I try to be more aware of when things aren't quite going right, and sometimes I sit down at the table, like no joke, like I'll waste the whole day. Like I'll sit here for 12 hours at my drafting table. And at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, like I just sat there and erased and redrew things and threw things out. And like, I didn't get anything done. And it's super frustrating and it's tough. But I think as time passes, I'm more and more confident that when I decide to stop or when I decide to take a break, I can come back to it just rested and like, and usually the ideas are better. Usually the creativity comes more easily. I think whenever you're trying to force something too much, it's just not going to go. But if you can have some ease and like patience and find a good rhythm, a good sustainable rhythm, that's also healthy for you and your body and your mental health, right? Like how can I have that sustainability like in my own practice, right? To be able to be healthy in what I do. And so yeah, I would say that just like I pause, I just stop. I'm like, all right, like you're not doing it right now. This is not working. And fortunately I'm always working on several projects simultaneously. So I'll put a project away and just pull out something else and work on something else for a little while and let it sit. Yeah. Sometimes the work needs silence and like to not be doing anything for a little while. It needs rest too. Yeah.
And speaking about projects, you're also currently writing and illustrating a story for young readers about growing up in the desert. Can you talk a bit more about this project?
Oh my God, yes, thank you. Uh, Yeah, I'm really excited about this project. This will be the first time that hopefully, I don't have a book deal yet, but I am in conversations with, some publishers and stuff. But it'll be the first time that I've written something and illustrated it. Well, I shouldn't say that. It'll be the first time something that I've written and illustrated has been officially published. Let me put it that way, right? Like I've published comics that I've written and a lot of self-published work, a lot of zines and things like that, right? Like I've been doing this for a long time. And so you just sometimes you just got to put the work out there yourself. But I'm really excited about this because I'll be able to spend time on actually um, writing, and I've spent a good, 2 years, 2.5 years writing it. I'm now in the phase of drawing it and like illustrating and working on the characters. And so this story and the idea comes from my childhood. It comes from the experience of my brother and sister, where we lived when we were younger. We lived at like one of the last houses on the outskirts of El Paso. And it was just like desert, right? It's just desert and mountains. It's just really raw, like nature. If we lived near a forest, it would be like filled with trees, but it's the desert. So it's like filled with cactuses and like bushes and rocks and stuff, and dirt and other beautiful, amazing things. And so I think that's that experience of being outside all day, that I think is something that has changed a little bit for us. Like I think we're inside a lot. We have these amazing devices that hold our attention for a long time and are amazing. But I think I also just want to, kind of capture that special moment when we can be outside and be under the sun, right? There's this really, the sun plays, whether we acknowledge it or not, the sun plays a really important part in our lives, right? It's responsible for a lot of really important things like, gravity and like heat and like growing our food and making us happy, right? It gives us vitamins. And so while it's not like a scientific book, like scientific, like Western science, it does have a lot of like, little things in there that are special things, just like growing up and being under the sun and playing in the dirt. And, it's like a little bit of a, love letter to like my sibling relationships, and a little bit to my dad too. It's like rooted in this dad story. And then to like make it something a little different, it's also like futuristic a little bit. It takes place in like a parallel universe. It's similar to our universe, but not quite. And so it's just like sci-fi. I was trying to think of like, how can I make a sci-fi picture book in the desert and about the sun? And so that's what it's about. So we'll see how it goes. It's gonna be unique for sure and strange, but yeah, I've just really enjoyed living with these characters, thinking about these moments. I've gone back to that place. I continue to go back to that place where I grew up and go for a hike or go for a run, right? Running is really important to me. And being in that space, and it's just like a really special space. It's a really special place to me. And so yeah, it's basically about that and takes place. And my intention is that hopefully there's a place like that for people who are reading it. While you may not live in the desert, what is that place to you, right? Like where do you go that you feel that kind of like unspoken like mystery, right? Like that special feeling that you feel when you're outside and it's snowing or it's raining or you're in the ocean or you're in the forest or whatever. And so I'm trying to capture that vibe a little bit, right? Like how do I put that vibe into a book?
So, what has been your writing process like for this upcoming project?
Oh, so long and so winding and so long. I'll just say it again because um, I was writing it during the Well, I shouldn't say we're done with the pandemic. At the early stage of the pandemic, right? And it was a lot of stopping and starting and working on other projects and then not touching it for months and then coming back to it. A lot of my writing happens in my head, right? A lot of my drawing also happens in my head. Sometimes people are visual people. I'm a very visual person. I like have scenes in my head, and when I'm drawing something and I'm working on a project, I'm like literally visualizing it in my head and in an attempt to draw it, right? And so a lot of it was done that way. A lot of it was living with it. And it's interesting to do something like that because it kind of it can be confusing for sure because you don't have something on paper. I was writing too. I shouldn't say that it was all done like that because I'm not like some It's not like some genius stuff, it's just like, that's just the way I was capable of working on it. It was practical, right? Because I didn't have a whole lot of time to sit down and write. But it really like makes you second guess and really makes you question things. And for me, it really made me have to be honest with myself. I think that when I set out to work on this project, I intended it for it to be about something else. And so the writing process for me is a lot of like stripping things away and trying to get at the core of what you're really writing about. And sometimes that means getting rid of things that you love, right? Like you may love a certain drawing or a certain line that you've written if you're writing, but sometimes they just don't fit. And so it's been a lot of editing and redrawing. And for the first time in my career, almost, I only wrote for a while. I kind of forced myself not to draw with pencil and only write, and that was a really big challenge for me. That was something new, and I had a hard time with it. And then eventually, I felt like the story was in a good place from a writing standpoint, and then I went on to drawing it. So yeah, long and disorganized, but fun, but fun. Yeah.
And for you, what does all of this mean? Being able to represent not only your culture and your art, but also to be an inspiration, to anyone that wants to venture into the world that you're in.
Not only my career, I think, but what I do as an illustrator, as a storyteller, right? Um, is I think I treat it similarly. I approach it similarly to just like how I live my life, right? Like the words that I speak have a meaning and have a power and a weight, because I have a platform, right? Like some people don't have the platform that I have. I'm not um I'm very aware of that, right? I'm very aware of that privilege that I have to be able to have a platform to publish and to get my book out and my work out. And in some ways, there's a responsibility with that, right? Like because I have that platform, I tried to be intentional, I guess is what I'm saying. I try to be intentional with the work that I make and the words that I say. And I also, when I'm speaking with other folks who are interested in doing something creative, and I say it generally like that because whatever you're interested in doing and whatever anyone's interested in doing, we're always interested in multiple things, right? Like you like to cook and you like music and you like to dance and you like to whatever. All of those are created, all of those are like connected in some way, right? Like they're connected to the same energy and like the way that we live and the way we express ourselves and communicate. And so I think uh, I try to be accessible. I try to be open and transparent, and I try to lift up other people who are trying to do this. Unfortunately, like in publishing, there's a lot of blocks. There's a lot of bias, right? There's a lot of racism in publishing. There's a lot of inequalities, and it's very inequitable, right? Publishing is. And so as I'm moving through the world and moving through this industry, trying to do what I can to challenge that and push on those things. And a lot of that sometimes doesn't have anything to do with the work that I'm making, right? Sometimes it's the work that I'm saying no to is as important as the work that I'm making. So I also need to be aware of, am I the right person to tell this story, right? There's, something that I asked myself, which is, and I got it from a YouTube video that I watched. I'm translating it. I wish I could quote the YouTube video, and it's a common thing. It's like a common enough to where I feel comfortable not quoting that link. But like why this story or why this project, why now, and why you, right? Why are you working on this project, or with this project specifically? Why are you doing it now? And are you the best person to be doing it? And so as I move forward, I try to answer that question. And a lot of the times, I would say the majority of the time, the answer to that last question is like, you're not the right person to do this. And so I think I see a responsibility in, then what do I do to that question? How can I then lift up someone else who is the right person? How can I then, leave the door open? I got into publishing through the back door. Both Isabel and I did. We're not necessarily trained in what we're doing, right? And we just got an opportunity. So I think there's a responsibility in that to like hold the door open, right? And like knock the door down and like break the windows and like, let everyone in, so that we can like tell our stories. But yeah, I think just that, passing on that, like, your story is valid, like people's stories are important. And I hope that everyone would find the opportunity and the privilege and the support to be able to tell their own story.
So before we end, we have some rapid fire questions.
Oh my God, I'm terrible at this. Okay. So nervous for this. Okay, go ahead.
The first question is, what is your favorite color?
My favorite color is teal or like turquoise. Yeah. And then secondarily, like purple. Purple really like vibrates with me. I don't know. Yeah.
When are you the happiest?
Oof. Right now I'm happiest holding my little boy. I have a newborn baby boy, Diego, and being with my wife, being with my family, being outside, being under the sun, drawing. Yeah, all of those things.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Don't be rushed, it's a winding path, as I mentioned before. And who you are and is important, right? And where you come from is important. I think that's something that was not really clear to me when I was younger, was that where I was from was really important. And it's taken me a little while to see that now. Both with regard to family and language and culture and all of those things. But yeah, slow down is maybe what I would say, but 18-year-old me is not going to listen to that, but I can say it nonetheless.
If you could have 3 people, dead or alive, for dinner guests, who would they be?
Oh, wow. They would all be relatives, certainly. I've lost a lot of people in my life. I lost my dad at a young age. I don't want to get emotional here. I would have dinner with my dad for sure. I would have dinner with my uncle. And then I have 2 cousins that have passed on that I would like to have dinner with. They would definitely be relatives, though. They would definitely be the people who've come before me and passed on. So there may be only 3 chairs at the table, because you only gave me 3 chairs at the table, but there would be standing room, and we would get the folding chairs out of the like cuartito of the little shed and like bring the folding chairs out, and like there would be room for everyone. But yeah, it would be those people for sure.
What is the song that you have on repeat currently?
Oh, whoa, I was not prepared for this one. Okay. I think always there's an album that I listen to very frequently that's gotten me through some hard times in my life. It's only 4 songs, so I'm gonna cheat. Sorry, I'm just like a cheater. I don't know. Sorry. But there are like the there are variations on Jay Dilla. There's a hip hop producer by the name of Jay Dilla. And these composers, Carlos Nino and Miguel Atwood, who are based in LA, took 4 of his songs, and there's a little EP, and it's called Suite for Ma Dukes. It's a suite for Jay Dilla's mother, basically, because Jay Dilla passed at a young age. And they're very just beautiful. They're just beautiful songs, and they really, really calm me down. When I get super stressed out, it's one of the few albums that I have saved on my phone, and I have it there for a reason. I have it there because it keeps me safe, and it like helps me get through like anxiety or just like something that I'm going through. But it's on repeat, it's a stressful time that we're living in. So I listen to those quite a bit.
What is a book that you have read recently or currently reading that you would recommend?
I read this book frequently. I read it a while ago, but This One Summer by G.E.N. Tamaki. It's a graphic novel. I read that one a lot. I think it's a really great book. It's a really good story. It's like masterful visual storytelling and like comic book making. So yeah, I'll just say that one.
Well, thank you so much, Zeke. We learned a lot about you. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to sit down with us and talk. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they could connect with you?
Yeah, thank you all so much for the time to be with y'all here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you to you, Desiree and Melissa, for having me. Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at ZP Visual. It's ZP Visual in Spanish. And so my website is zpvisual.com if you want to check out more work in my portfolio. And then the project that I'm working on one thing, but I don't think I can talk about it right now, but I'm working on a book with another author. It's about a comic book character and I'm super excited about it. So look out for that one for sure. And then, yeah, the book that I'm writing and illustrating, it's a picture book, it's a children's book, but it's also, they're meant for anyone. Anyone can read a picture book, I think, right? Sometimes you just need this like quick little reset, So I would say check that out. And then I'm always posting work, on my page and on Instagram. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much. We truly appreciate you and your time. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for the platform. And yeah, we'll see y'all later. Peace.
Did you enjoy this episode? I'm sure you did. Don't forget to follow us on our socials, both on Facebook and Instagram at MyGlendaleLAC.
And follow us on Spotify and Apple or anywhere where you get your podcast from at TGN Talks, the podcast. Also, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Glendale Library Arts and Culture, where we post the full episode videos every Friday at 4:30 p.m.